Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mac, and tonight we got another edition of the Cavalier Mailbag. You guys know how that goes. You submit your questions, and I do my best to answer them. Some of them are going to be a little bit more opinionated than others, as you know, that's just par for the course when it comes to some of these types of episodes. You may disagree with me, you may agree with me, but it's all in good fun. I appreciate the discourse. To be honest with you guys, I'm really excited about this second half of the season. There are so many different things that remain unanswered for this team, but heading into the All-Star break, after these trades, right, to acquire Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder, to acquire James Harden, there's there's a lot of optimism right now. The team is just feels like there's an entirely different energy around them, and I know we all can't wait to kick off the second half and then to eventually get into the playoffs to see if these moves will pay off. And that's what it's all about at this point in time. And so let's go ahead and dive right into the first questions here. And the first one here comes from Precision over on Twitter. Let me go ahead and get rid of the overlay. He asks, if you had to make a 9-man playoff rotation with Harden, Donovan, Tyson, Mobley, Allen, Merrill, Strus, and Schroeder as the locks, what player would you pick from the rest of the roster to be the ninth man? Holy moly. I mean, listen, we have gone from probably not enough depth at certain positions to having maybe too much. And I think a lot of people would probably tell you that this team is now really stacked at the guard spot. I mean, you got James Harden, obviously, Donovan Mitchell, two of the top 20 players in the NBA. Really, honestly, two of the top 15 players in the NBA this year and years prior. And then you have Dennis Schroeder and Sam Merrill who have minutes there, Keon Ellis who will have minutes there, Craig Porter Jr. and Max Strus. If I hadn't already mentioned, there's so many different names that could potentially eat minutes at the 1 and the 2 for this Cavaliers team. And it's going to be really hard to try and pick and choose who deserves to be in there. Maybe that ninth man is situational, and I know that that's a tough thing for a head coach sometimes to know which lever to pull for a specific player. But if you're going by these locks right here, he says Donovan and Harden. Obviously, you're not going to have those two out there. Those are as much of a lock as they can get out there. Tyson, I think, should be the starting three, but there's a real big case for Dean Wade. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see Kenny Atkinson go with either one of those two guys as the starting three. But assuming that we're going to continue along the same lines that we have most of the season, and that being Tyson drawing the starts at the three, those three are probably pretty good bets to be the 1, 2, and the 3. Mobley and Allen, obviously, those are locks. So you're starting 5. Doesn't really seem like there's a lot of wiggle room there. Merrill is going to play. He has been an absolute flamethrower this season. I don't think that the Cavaliers would have rewarded him with that contract if they had not believed in his ability to knock down that three-point shot and provide solid point of attack defense, because Merrill is an underrated point of attack defender. I say all that to say that they hope and pray that that his style of play will translate to the postseason, and I think it will. So Merrill, probably a lot to be there. Strus, to be honest with you guys, as much as I want to see Max Strus, I really miss him. I posted that dunk montage that I created over the summer again on social media, and I'm like, man, I cannot wait for this guy to get back on the court. And for me, I just don't know when that will be. One would assume that it will come during the regular season at some point, whether that be in March or early April. I just don't know. But I think what also has to be taken into consideration is that you have to assume that he is going to need some time to ramp up. He's not going to automatically jump in and be in playoff, let alone basketball shape. It's an entirely different story when you're talking about the levels of intensity. There's a gap in between regular season basketball and postseason basketball in terms of being in basketball shape. So Max is going to need some time. I'm not so sure what that looks like for him from a minutes standpoint, but I would assume that if he is healthy enough to suit up, he will suit up and he will be within the rotation as one of the first three guys off the bench. Dennis Schroeder, I would assume, especially since the Cavaliers wanted additional ball handling and creation off that bench, he's going to play. I think yeah, you acquired him alongside Keon Ellis due to the fact that you knew that the skills and the particular things that he does very well, dribble penetration, and driving really, and getting other guys involved. We've already seen some of that play out in the pick and roll with Allen and Thomas Bryant. But I would assume that Dennis Schroeder is also a lock to start in the playoff rotation, and we'll see how that goes as the postseason rolls on. But I would assume that he is a lock and as good as it gets. So when you're talking about Merrill, Strus, and Schroeder, those are essentially three guards when you really boil it down to it, right? Max, he'll get the minutes at the three, I would assume when he is in, but there are so many different configurations in regards to the lineup that you can go with a Max because he is versatile. He doesn't always get the credit that he deserves for his versatility out there. He can play make a little bit. He can initiate the pick and roll with Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. He is a pretty good cutter of the basketball. And obviously, he moves without the ball very, very well. He's a volume shooter. He's an underrated rebounder, underrated defender, but undersized at the three when he plays there. So it's really going to be up to Kenny Atkinson how he utilizes him. But again, those are essentially three guards. Dennis, Strus, and Merrill. Those are really three guards. Tough to pick that final guy because you're going to need at least somebody with size out there in that front court. Because yes, Mobley and Allen will in the postseason likely be staggered to a degree, even more so than they are right now, and they're probably going to rotate for those backup 5 minutes. But you're going to need somebody out there that can play and soak up some backup 4 minutes, whether that is a Naquan Tomlin, whether that is a Dean Wade, whether you want Jalen Tyson playing up a position at the four where you know he can, but it's not always ideal because of purely just being undersized. And he is a above average rebounder from a positional standpoint, but you still want somebody with some size out there. And I would assume that based upon what we have seen, and again, this is not necessarily me saying it should always be the case, but based upon what we have seen this year, assuming he is healthy, I think Kenny Atkinson is going to roll with Dean Wade as that ninth man. If you're talking with these names included, with Merrill, with Strus, with Schroeder, I think that he would opt to go with Wade as that ninth guy, especially considering the need for defense out there oftentimes at the wing. And Dean is one of the elite wing defenders that we have in the NBA. You never really question his tenacity out there, his heart and his hustle to defend. Really, the questions with Wade have always laid on the offensive side of the ball and in regards to staying healthy consistently come the playoffs and really in the regular season, just in general. But I would assume that he probably, assuming with this lineup that you have put together, Dean Wade would probably be that ninth guy. Now, Keon Ellis is also somebody I think that cannot be just thrown away here because, again, I'm going to read through these names just to make sure I'm not crazy and missed it. Harden, Donovan, Tyson, Mobley, Allen, Merrill, Strus, Schroeder. So, yeah, if there's no Ellis in there, that's tough because if you're going with Merrill, Strus, and Schroeder, and then you add in Keon into that, that's a tall ask. That's a tough and tall order for any one of those guys to be playing up a position unless one of Allen and Mobley are on the floor at all times and you're consistently playing small, which we know the Cavaliers will be forced to at points during the playoffs. But still, to not have anybody with size as a reserve, whether that be Tomlin or Wade or Thomas Bryant, like that's tough. That is tough. So I don't even know what is going to end up happening here. And I certainly do not envy Kenny Atkinson because that is a difficult thing to try and discern. And maybe it is matchup based. Maybe they will elect to play more Keon Ellis in less Dennis Schroeder at points because one would also assume that James Harden and Donovan Mitchell will also rotate as that one guard. Maybe those minutes are staggered and those lineups are different too. So maybe that's how you work Keon into it. But if I'm being honest with you guys, I'm going with a 10-man rotation. There's too much talent on this roster for the rotation to be boiled down to 9 guys. If you have to go with 9, I'm going Dean Wade, and maybe I remove Schroeder at points for Keon, but I'm opening this up to 10, and I'm sure Precision would too, just purely based upon who we have on this roster now. And at that point, you don't really have as many questions, right? You're probably opening up to that bench, the 5 off the bench being Schroeder, Merrill, Strus, Ellis, and Dean. And yeah, I mean, and then you can, differentiate between who you want in any particular game versus Dean and Naquan Tomlin. Tomlin brings a lot of energy, but the only real problem with Naquan Tomlin right now is just that 3-point shot. And I know a lot of people argue, like, well, shit, Dean Wade has been a terrible shooter in the postseason. Well, yeah, this is true, but I think that even Dean, with how shitty he has been of a 3-point shooter, has still been better than Naquan Tomlin, and he is a better defender than Naquan Tomlin. So there's no disrespect to Naquan. I love the guy, but yeah, I mean, Dean probably gets the first crack at it. And if you need to switch it up, you need to inject some energy into the rotation. Naquan Naquan all day, right? But yeah, I'm opening this up to 10, and I'm going with Don, Harden, Tyson, Evan, Allen as the 5 guys to start, and Schroeder, Merrill, Strus, Keon, and Dean would probably be my first 5 off the bench. And obviously, it's about matchups and it's about adjusting in real time in the playoffs, depending upon what is needed. And you can change things up. If you need somebody that is more traditional at the 5, maybe you go with Thomas Bryant over Dean Wade at points in the lineup. And, on and on and so forth. There's a lot of different lineup combinations this team can go with. They have way more depth at the guard position than they do at it, or rather in the front court. So it's going to make things a little bit more difficult, and they will be playing smaller than I think people would want them to, but that's just where we are from a roster standpoint, roster construction, whatever would have you. But that's where we are. Next up comes from Brandon Cessna. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Says, with the acquisition of James Harden, you sped up the process of the runway of this team. Who has more pressure on them, Evan or Donovan? It is absolutely unequivocally Donovan Mitchell, in my opinion. Listen, Evan Mobley has now been rendered the 3rd option by a good margin now. It's James Harden, it's Donovan Mitchell. Those are your 1A, 1B, whatever direction you want to shift those 2 in. Those are the first 2 options. Evan Mobley becomes a distant 3rd. He will get his touches, nowhere near the amount you probably could have expected if it was still Darius in place of a James, because James has a higher usage rate than a DG. But I mean, Don co-signed this move. He campaigned for it, and they gave him what he wanted. I don't see any problem with that, but I think that does put even more pressure on Donovan than it does Evan. You want Evan to continue to improve his game, and I think that you want to be able to consider Evan Mobley a top 10 player at all times and not just throughout points of the season. But obviously, I think that with a move like this, if you're the resident superstar in town, you're going to have all the pressure on you. To me, it's Don. Don all day. And I want to see Evan have like this series where he balls out and he leaves no questions, and he looks like one of the 2 best players in the series. But with James Harden and Donovan Mitchell on the roster, that's going to be hard at times. So to me, it's Donovan Mitchell all day in reference to this question. Next question comes from Kid Rambo, who says, do you see Keon starting in the offs? I'm assuming this is just whether or not Keon will be in the playoff rotation. Yeah, I think if this is in regards to Keon starting like at the 3, let me just say no. I think that they would prefer to have one of Jalen Tyson or Dean Wade out there as the starting three. Max Strus is a dark horse if he can get back in playoff basketball shape, but I think it's really just a two-man or two-man race between Jalen and Dean, and there's a lot of caveats that go along with that. But Keon, if they feel like they need to adjust and switch things up, maybe, but I don't think he will start in the playoffs. I do think he will be in the rotation. I think Kenny will at least go 10 deep. But to me, yeah, I just don't see it. And I think that's where I'm at with that. Next question comes from Reasonable TK, who asks, if the Cavs finish fourth in the East, who would you like to see in first round for the 4-5 matchup? So let's do ourselves a favor here in real time and look at the Eastern Conference standings as we're recording this. Detroit is number one. Boston is number two. New York is number three. Cleveland is number four. To be honest with you guys, I do not think the Cavaliers will finish the season as a fourth seed. I think they finish no worse than the second seed. And there's still a case to be made that they could catch up to Detroit as the number one seed. But let's just assume that doesn't happen and they at worst get the second seed in the Eastern Conference. That's this that to me, I think that's realistic. I don't want to say getting the number one seed is unrealistic because it's still on the table, but I think it's much more realistic to see them get to the number two seed, considering there's really just a game and a half margin between 2 and 4 right now. But if they did stay at 4, I think the matchup that I would want to see would probably be Philly. Right now, you can make a case for Toronto, who is the current fifth seed, but Toronto has given Cleveland some issues. Granted, earlier on in the season, they have given Cleveland some issues this year, but I would be okay seeing them match up with Philly. I think that's a team that Cleveland has the requisite size and versatility now to compete with. Jarrett Allen has actually fared quite well against Joel Embiid this year. Tyrese Maxey doesn't scare me as much as he used to with Keon Ellis now on the roster. Dean Wade being able to capably handle wing and guard players out there. I think it's Philly. And that is not something that I think that I would have seen myself saying in years prior. But right now, it is unequivocally the Philadelphia 76ers if both of these teams were to end up in this specific scenario. I don't think they will, but to me, yeah, it's Philly. Next up, we have HM who says when everyone healthy, who gets the starting small forward spot? And if it's Tyson, are you ready to sacrifice his touches now as he has gotten better with the ball? I just had a stream about this, and here are my thoughts, right? To condense it down, Jalen Tyson is a starting caliber wing right now. You can start at the 2, you can start at the 3. They have played him at the 4. I don't love it, or rather, they have started him at the 4. I don't love that, but he is more than capable to handle starting minutes at the 2 and the 3. As of right now, one thing is abundantly clear to me. When Evan Mobley returns, there will be literally likely no true on ball touches for one Jalen Tyson because it's Donovan, it's James, and Evan. Those three will dominate the bulk of the touches that come the Cavaliers' way from an offensive standpoint. And Jarrett Allen and whoever else that fifth starter is will not get anything more than likely off-ball touches at that or off-ball reps at that point, which usually for that fifth starter comes in the form of catch and shoot or cutting to the basket. In the case of Jarrett Allen, rim rolling. So yeah, you are going to be if you are starting Jalen Tyson, which is fine because he has been an explosive shot maker off the ball. I mean, top 3 in percentage, if I'm not mistaken, as of right now in terms of that 3-point shot. You did not expect that from him this year, which is it's lovely. Obviously, the development that he has made in that area specifically has been phenomenal. Second highest percentage in the NBA right now, 47.5% in terms of overall 3-point percentage. So to remove that from the starting lineup, that's tough because that means that the defense won't have to account for that. And we already know that James Harden has so much gravity. Donovan Mitchell has so much gravity. Jalen Tyson has so much gravity as a shot maker that it's usually a pick your own poison, because there's also the threat of the pick and roll with the bigs out there, especially Jarrett Allen. Now 1-5 pick and roll between Harden and Allen now coming into the picture. So if you're putting him in that starting five, you are knowingly tanking his on-ball development in place of more consistency from a rebounding, from a defense, from a health, from an off-ball shot making standpoint. You're sacrificing the on-ball development for those areas, which that's fine if you're okay with making that sacrifice if you're Kenny Atkinson. But the counter argument against that is if you are going to place him on the bench in a high minute role, you do give him the continued development as an on ball creator, where we know that he was starting to develop more and more of a chemistry with Jarrett Allen in the pick and roll. And that was nice to see. And I do think that's an area that has been untapped in his game as of late. And now in more than an off-ball role, or in more of an off-ball role rather, you're just not going to see that if he's starting, or rather if he's in those lineups. You can get around that to a degree by simply staggering guys. Just because they start the game off with one another doesn't mean those lineups have to be the ones that those guys always play in. You can mix and match specific things so that you can get Tyson more on ball reps, but it's going to be harder if you're starting and closing games with Tyson at the three. It's just one of those things. For me personally, I would prefer that Jalen Tyson draws the start at the three, but that's me being selfish and me understanding that, yeah, I am giving up the on ball development for the more consistent shot making that he can bring to the table. But I'd be lying to you if I told you that there isn't still some utility or some validity to starting Dean Wade at the three because of the defensive chops. And while I love Jalen Tyson, Dean Wade is the superior defender at that position, and he's not a bad rebounder. The real problem with Dean Wade right now is simply just the shot making and the health. If Dean can get to a respectable 35-36% from three-point distance in the playoffs on decent volume, like 3-4 attempts per game, you're good there, because you don't have to worry about any chemistry issues. You don't have to worry about him feeling like he is not in like the flow of the offense because he's relegated to an off-ball role strictly. You don't have to worry about a lot of these things. So there is some validity to the belief that Dean Wade should start. But for me, like, to take away a 45+% shooter from three-point distance, that's tough, because it gives you so much more gravity. It just gives you so much more gravity out there, because teams are now going to have to make a decision between whether or not they want to send two James Harden's way, whether or not they want to double Donovan Mitchell and leave another open shooter open, whether they want to sacrifice potential coverage down low because of the bigs and Allen's ability as a roll man. And then Evan Mobley factors in here as well as a potential spacer and roll man himself. So there's a lot of different things. It's pick your own poison. But for right now, I lean Jalen Tyson as the starting three. Tough to see, though, what that will look like with Evan Mobley back in the lineup, because, again, he is the third option. That renders Jalen Tyson mostly off ball, if not always off the ball, in the lineups when they are on the court together. Let's see. Keon Keon Ellis lover, I should say, says thoughts on Keon Ellis's development. We are 4 games into the Keon Ellis experience in Cleveland, and returns have been encouraging. I do want to just go ahead and say this. I always knew that Keon Ellis would be a great defender at the point of attack for Cleveland, because he has been that throughout the entirety of his career prior to coming to Cleveland for the Sacramento Kings, despite him not necessarily playing nearly as much this year. He is damn good at the point of attack. I wouldn't say he is like all defensive level, but he is damn good. Where things are lagging, obviously, in his short time over here has been that 3-point shot. 3.8 attempts per contest in his first 4 appearances as a Cavalier, but he's only shooting 33.3% from deep. And almost all of his looks have come wide open. If you're, or rather, what the NBA deems wide open. If you're unfamiliar with what that designation means, it means anytime a shot, the closest defender is 6 or more feet away from you when you attempt it, that's what the NBA considers wide open. And I think I put this stat out there in the video that I made about Keon Ellis's first couple of games here, but I want to say he is like 11 of his 15 3-point attempts in Cleveland have been considered wide open. And so he's got to knock those down. I do believe that that will come around. And this season, you do have to understand he is shooting, he entered Cleveland shooting 36.8% from deep, which is still respectable, but you want to see that number trend back upwards to like the 40% territory that he had in the 2 seasons prior in 2023-24 through 2024-25, where he shot at worst 41.7%. So you want to see him trend back upwards closer to that 40% range. If he can do that, things going to be lovely. But even if he doesn't, if you can get around 37, 38, I'd be happy with that, considering the point of attack defense that he plays and the volume of the 3-point shots that he brings to the table. So to me, I think that you're probably going to see that trend back upward. But I have been pleasantly surprised with what I have seen from Keon Ellis. Well, let's not go that way, because I always knew that he was capable of doing what he has done so far. I just need to see the offense follow suit. So in terms of the 4 games, I mean, not much to say in terms of development. Over the course of his career, I've been really, really impressed from what I've seen, because I have been an Ellis fan for a number of years. He had really, really great stints as a defender and as a shot maker for Sacramento, despite them being all over the place as a team. And I'm really encouraged by what we have seen from Keon Ellis thus far. Now, I don't think that he has logged a single minute as of right now in terms of playoffs. I don't think he has logged a single minute for Sacramento or, for them in the playoffs, considering I mean, they have been a disaster of a franchise over these, post 2000s, right? They haven't made the playoffs since the 2022-23 season. That was like 4 years ago at this point. And I mean, yeah, he just wasn't a factor in the playoffs at that point in time. So what a hell of a series that was against the Golden State Warriors. He's just in a place right now where you don't really know what to expect from him come the playoffs, because we haven't seen him log those minutes. But I would assume that everything that he brings to the table can carry over. But very, very impressed what I have seen from him thus far. We'll end up seeing what this looks like come the playoffs, though. That might actually do it for the questions that were submitted over on Twitter. So let me go ahead and no, there's one more. There's one more. And it comes from YPG, who says, "Is George Niang the missing piece?" Um, no, I love George. I've had George on the show before, and he certainly brought an edge to the table. Somewhat of an asshole out there, and that I mean that in a good way. I think they got that back in Dennis Schroeder, who has that same type of mentality out there, that take no shit mentality. But I mean, no, and I'm sure you're probably not that serious with this statement, or rather question, but no. Uh, it still would be nice to see Niang end up somewhere where he can contribute, though, and hopefully that does end up happening next year. Let's hop into the chat, shall we? D-Style269 says, "Always good content, Mac. I'm pretty sure Kenny has been reading my comments on here because JA has been getting the ball and they have been winning." Yeah, I mean, listen, maybe he is, and I would be ecstatic if that was the case, because that would mean that Kenny Atkinson understands that, hey, it doesn't always have to be a specific way with Jarrett Allen. We don't have to turn away from him come the fourth quarter. We don't have to bench him come the fourth quarter. We can consistently get him involved. And I think that with James Harden in town, you're only going to see his production look even better at this point in time. Now, again, we don't know what things will look like once Evan comes back. I assume there will be an even bigger adjustment period than these first couple of games that we've seen between Donovan and James. But I think that as long as you're getting Jarrett Allen consistently involved, I think good things will happen. I have said this numerous times on the pod. I think a involved Jarrett Allen is a productive Jarrett Allen. There are points because I do want to be objective here. Jarrett Allen is not a perfect player. Obviously, he is very dependent upon others to get him involved. But I think that more often than not, when you do elect to give this man the ball, he does reward you. When the Cavaliers actually give Jarrett Allen the ball a good number of times, meaning touches and field goal attempts, I think that you really see this play out in wins, right? And I just don't know any other way to put it because Jarrett Allen is somebody that consistently can get downhill off of run rolls, right? He's a very, very good pick and roll big. And with a guy who specializes in that in Harden, it's only fair to assume that that should be able to be replicated night in and night out because of what we have seen him do with guys like Clint Capella and Ivica Zubac in the past. And Allen is a great rim runner. He has made all-star roster doing exactly that because of Darius Garland getting him the ball in that way. And he has looked like a fringe all-star almost every single season he has been with Cleveland. So I expect that to continue. I'm hoping that this is the year in the playoffs where Jarrett Allen shuts up all of his naysayers and looks great, right? And for a guy who is dependent upon others to get him the ball, I understand that it won't always look that way in every single game, but just get him the ball. Get him the damn ball. And that's really where it is with me with Jarrett Allen because he is a player that I feel like is consistently disrespected. I think that because he plays with such offensively skilled players, he often is overlooked in terms of what he brings to the table. But I think that any actual basketball savant or somebody that has any real knowledge of hoops will tell you that the Cavaliers are better when Jarrett Allen is involved. And that's just that, right? I think that he is obviously when he does not have Mobley beside him, he looks better in terms of the involvement. But that is not me saying that the Cavaliers are better off without Evan Mobley. So I don't want anybody to misconstrue that. I think that there's ways to make it work, whether you're staggering and you're putting specific lineup combinations out there, whether that be James and Tyson and Allen or some form. There are so many different lineup combinations that you can put around Jarrett Allen to get him more and more involved. But with James Harden in town, I can't help but think that things are going to look good and for the long haul. I'm just very, very interested to see how this plays out once Mobley touches the court. It's just it's just going to be an interesting thing. That's really all I'm trying to say. And this season, if you're strictly looking at what they have done when he is heavily involved, when he gets at least 10 field goal attempts this season, they are 13-0. They are 13-0 this year when Jarrett Allen has at least when he has at least 10 field goal attempts. Just give him the ball consistently. That's really all it boils down to. Steph 899 says Harden, Mitchell, Tyson, Allen, then Merrill, Ellis, Schroeder, Dean Wade. As Strus comes back 100%, I think he'll start, and Ellis will get minutes over Schroeder with Tyson taking Dennis's role. That's a fair sentiment. I think that, again, I don't expect Max to come back and immediately get the starting role. I think, a lot of things have changed since Max has been out in there in that court, and he's going to have to earn it, and he will also have to get back into game shape and then playoff basketball shape. That's a tall order in a short span of time. I mean, we are in mid-February. Playoffs start in about 2 months. I mean, so it's going to be tough. Hailstone says, I am excited to Um, D Style 269 says Mobley, Wade, Ellis, Dennis, and Merrill should be an effective lineup for a second unit. Yeah, I mean, if you're putting Mobley out there as that the backup five in those lineups, I think that looks very, very well from a deflections standpoint. So, Dennis can rack them up. We know that Ellis can rack them up. We know Wade can rack them up. Merrill's underrated there, but at the point of attack, those are some really good defenders. And then you have great backline defense in Evan Mobley. Talking to Grubman Media says, "What's up, Mac? The major games like the Thunder, Knicks, Pistons, and Celtics are more hyped now with the Harden trade. Which games are you looking forward to in the second half?" Man, there are so many matchups that this team has to look forward to, and we as fans have to look forward to. I think to me, some of the ones that stand out the most are the Detroit games, which will happen around the end of this month. They are going to be pivotal matchups because of the ramifications of seeding, right? They play Detroit on the 27th, and they will play Detroit again on the 3rd. Those are huge games for seeding purposes. I think New York, anytime we get a chance to play New York, there's a lot of Knicks fans that just won't shut the hell up, and getting a win against them and perhaps looking dominant in doing so would be phenomenal because we already know the timelines, especially on Twitter, are jumping the whenever the Cavaliers and Knicks play one another. And again, I give them their credit. The Knicks, they are a fun team, right? And they do offer some stylistic differences that the Cavaliers have always struggled with. But I do think that the Cavaliers are uniquely suited with James Harden now to overcome some of those deficiencies. I'm very, very interested in that matchup. OKC, obviously, that's a big one. I think SGA is still out, or rather, will be out by the time they play. So that's, I don't know. I don't know on paper, or rather on the court, what that's going to end up looking like. But I think that after the ass whooping that the Cavaliers were handed against SGA and company the first time they matched up this year, it's you're hoping that they'll end up getting even. I know B-Ball Index, or rather Basketball Reference, says that SGA will be reevaluated after the All-Star break. That update was on February 4th, by the way. So I mean, I don't know. We'll see if he ends up suiting up in that one. Um, James Davis Allen says it's no reason Max should be the starting small forward after missing the season. Basically, in my opinion, I think one, that's a big leap. He has to one, get in basketball shape, and he's got to earn it back. And to be honest, I don't know if that can be done. There's been so much that has occurred this year, whether that be the development of Tyson, whether that be Merrill playing so damn well, whether that be Dean Wade, um, contributing heavily on the defensive standpoint. There's a lot of things that has happened this year that may make it impossible for him to reclaim that starting job. But I don't know. We will end up seeing what happens. HJ17 Gaming says, "What do you think of staggering D Mitch, Tyson, and Mobley, and then Harden, Keon, and JA? Everyone else is mix and match. Come playoffs, I think Kenny will go with the hot hand at the 3 position." To be honest with you, this makes a lot of sense because if you're going to try and maximize the on ball creation and development of Jalen Tyson, that's one way you can do it, as having him play minutes at the 2 or the 3 in lineups with Donovan so that you can have him get more of those on ball touches, because you're just not going to get that as much with James Harden being beside those two, or rather those 3 with Mobley and Donovan and Tyson. So it does make sense to kind of split things up. And that we have seen how impactful James Harden and JA look together, and then Keon being thrown in there from a defensive standpoint, racking up deflections, being a chaos agent defensively, and being able to knock down that off ball shot. That makes a lot of sense. And maybe he will let to go with the high hand at the 3 and just kind of shuffle as needed and go matchup based at times. I don't know how it's all gonna look, but there are a lot of merits to going that route. I especially like staggering, and they've already done that this year with the bigs, and I assume that's gonna only continue with, the new look Cavaliers. So we'll see when it's up happening. Isaac on YT says, "I'd rather have Tyson ball handling than Mobley." I think it's less ball handling and more so like on ball touches. Like Mobley is going to get his touches. You're not going to ask him like bring the ball up the court too much more with Harden now getting the bulk of the touches outside of Donovan Mitchell, but he still will need the ball in his hands at times, especially in that post area or the mid range, right? You're not going to ask Mobley to be strictly off the ball. I think that if one thing has this season has taught us all is that Tyson can operate very, very efficiently when off ball, and he doesn't need the ball in his hands to be impactful. Mobley, on the other hand, still needs the ball in his hands more often than not to be effective outside of purely rolling to the rim, which I mean, with Jarrett Allen being able to do what he does, it's going to be a really big question mark. But to me, I think that you're probably would be it probably would be more beneficial for you if you are starting Tyson at the 3 to continue to give Mobley the ball, because we know that Tyson doesn't need it in his hands. But that's a good thing. The beauty about having the versatility that this team now has. D-Style 269 says, "What do you think about moving on from Mobley after this year?" I don't like that idea. No player is untouchable. Obviously, everybody has their price, but I would need to know, like, if you're choosing to move on from Evan Mobley, what would you like to be brought to the table? What is an offer you would be willing to accept? To me, I'm not doing that, but I'm interested in hearing who you would like to bring in. Guns N' Roses says, "I heard we have the second easiest remaining schedule." I think that something was just put out there about that. I think it was fifth, but maybe I misread. Maybe I misread that. I don't know. Let's see here. It's Kiwi says, "I love your streams. Keep it up." I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody who's in here. He also says, "I listen to you at work on lunch when you drop, and you make my days a lot." I appreciate that. I put a lot of time and effort to these streams. Sometimes I go a little bit overboard with it, but I truly do appreciate hearing comments like that because it makes it all worth it. And obviously, you guys don't have to be here with me. You're giving me the time of the day, and I appreciate that truly. And if I'm being even more honest with you guys, this gives me the this gives me a creative outlet. I have consistently throughout my life struggled with anxiety, and it has given me. I've run this podcast for what is it, I think four years now, maybe 5 years. This has given me an outlet to work through a lot of those anxieties, and I've seen a lot of development in that in my personal life. So I appreciate you guys for making this easier on me. Guns N' Roses 87 says, "Out of all the Cavs jersey you could have framed, you chose Larry Nance Jr. Not hating on your style, but we have Donovan." Just saying. So two things. The Larry Nance Jr. jersey that I have back there, I don't know if you can see it, but it is personally autographed. I met Larry at a game this season, and he had a couple of post game passes to go meet Larry, and it was pretty awesome, right? He's very, very down to earth guy. I've had numerous interactions with Larry over the years, always been a fan favorite of mine. And, I finally met him in person this year. And I don't know, I don't think you can see it, but all those little squiggly lines and stuff, those are personal messages. That was a personal message. I don't, says, to Mac, much love and respect. So I had to frame that. I had no choice. Larry's always been my guy. And to the point about Donovan Mitchell, funny story. I know I've told this probably a couple of times already, but I'll do it again. I have a Donovan Mitchell jersey right here that is autographed by Darius Garland because I brought a Donovan Mitchell jersey to the same game where I met Larry, and I intended on getting Don to also autograph it, but Don did not come out during that session. But Darius Garland, Thomas Bryant, DeAndre Hunter, Sam Merrill, all these different players came out. Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley was out there. There was a whole bunch of people, including the coaching staff, that came out. Don, for whatever reason, did not come out at that game, but there is a autograph here from Darius Garland, which is the funny story for the day. I got Darius's autograph on a Donovan Mitchell jersey. That has always cracked me up. But yeah, I hope to get the Don auto here soon. He also says these YouTube ads are getting out of control. Yeah, they cut in and out. I have them turned on, but obviously, obviously I don't control when they will pop up. Cavs FA says, I'm a Cavs fan. Dissolve in the Flesh says, Cavs snatching that number one seed after that horrible start would be a huge deal. It definitely would. I would love to see that. Mixed says, if there was an expansion team added and you could only keep 8 players, who would you keep? Ooh, that is a tough one. That's a tough one. Obviously, the untouchables start with James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, Jalen Tyson. Those 5 are untouchable to me in expansion draft. Sam Merrill would probably be that 6th guy. I think that at that point things get real dicey, man. They get real dicey. Um, I 2 more players. That's so tough because there are so many deserving candidates. Like, I want to keep my hands on Keon Ellis. I want to keep my hands on Naquan Tomlin. I want to keep Dean Wade for the defense. There's I want to keep Dennis for the ball handling. But again, Dennis is like not going to be a long-term player here. You got to start thinking about the future if you're doing that. And I think if I was forced, it would probably be Keon, and it would probably be Naquan. Oh, man. That is so tough. That is so tough. I hate that. That's a great question, though, because we very well could be faced with the scenario. But I'm not really worried about that because they're probably only going to be adding, 2 teams at this point in time, and you might see 1 player from the Cavaliers plucked. So I'm not really too worried about it. Two-Faced Villain says, Kenny got the right parts he needs. The Cavaliers really don't got a weakness. To me, I think the weakness right now is just the depth in the front court. It's the depth in the front court. I just outside of that, I don't really see too many because you can't really pick on them from a size standpoint because James Harden is considerably taller, bigger out there than Darius Garland. No disrespect, but it's just the case. Let's see here. Dr. Claw 77 says, I have the most random Cavs jerseys. Mo Williams. I love Mo. 40th. Shaq, 40th. Sexton earned it. Oh, that's a good one. I love that one. Okoro Land. Yeah, that's a good one. Rondo. Listen, Rajon Rondo in Cleveland, wine and gold was awesome. During the 2021-22 season where if they would have gotten Rondo of like a year or 2 prior to that, things would have really been popping off. But after losing Colin, after losing Ricky that year, trying to plug and play with like guys like Brandon Goodwin, and just so much on the roster at that point. And obviously brought in Karis LeVert that year to try and shore things up. But it was crazy. It was kind of surreal to see him in the wine and gold. But Rondo's always been a player that I've loved. He also says, I also have the Jarrett Allen from that same year of the Curtain Call City Uni. That's a good one. That is a good one. Masterling, who one says, let James Harden play 3. To me, I think that I don't love the idea of that from a defensive standpoint. Obviously, he has the size, but traditionally, because they track these things, obviously, they track the minutes usage. And traditionally, he hasn't really lined up at the 3 in years. I guess you can do that from a lineup standpoint, but I don't think I will love that defensively. And Harden is not a slouch defensively, obviously. He's racked up a ton of blocks already as a help side defender, but I wouldn't love that. I mean, you have to, if you check cleaning the glass, you got to go back to the 2015-2016 season to see him registering anything higher than 2% of his minutes logged at the small forward position. That was 10 years ago. Harden is not that guy. He's just not the same guy he was. He has adapted and adjusted his game. He is a full-time point guard right now. He can play the 2, obviously, but he has played 100% of his minutes this year at the 1. I don't see that changing. We'll see. We'll end up seeing what happens, though. D-Style says, Mac, what about Kobe making the team better while saving $100 million? Thoughts on Altman as GM? I've always considered Kobe Altman can be one of the better GMs or president of basketball operations in basketball. And I think this this trade deadline has probably changed a lot of people's minds in regards to him, because there's a lot of people that tell you Kobe Altman has had some misses. And while that's true of any GM or person in his, because he is the president of basketball operations. We can't undermine Mike Gansey. Um, Anybody in his position are going to miss. You're not going to hit on everything you do, but he has had a lot more hits than misses, especially with some of the late drafting, picking up some of these undrafted guys, getting guys and back into trades, like getting Jarrett Allen in the James Harden Brooklyn, saga and stuff like that, turning some of the pieces that he has gotten into bigger pieces and guys that fit what the Cavaliers need at certain points in time. He's become underappreciated. And I think obviously you're going to have to see this play out in the playoffs, especially with Harden. But Kobe is a top 5, top 10 GM president. He's top 10 in my opinion at his position. And yeah, I'm very appreciative of what he has done. And the monetary side of this cannot be ignored either. Saving all that money, considering the Cavs' second apron restrictions, is huge in terms of the future. But honestly, guys, I think that's about all I can do for right now. You've been in here for about 50 minutes or so. I appreciate each and every one of you for being in here. If you're still here by chance, consider hitting that like button. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber to this Cavalier podcast. Do the same for Positive Hooper. If you want to support the show in a small but helpful way, consider becoming a member over on Patreon. Hell, you can do it on YouTube if you want to as well. All that said, go Cavs. Have